as cheap as 15,000 stocks and definitely exchange traded funds on the latest treasury bonds here in East Africa. We are selling on the secondary market, so you can find the different maturities of 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years plus. With Otex East Africa, we say you can do something new because the market is free for the Uganda Securities Exchange business here. As per Thursday, data hasn't been updated for Monday tradings. Remember, Friday was a public holiday, so the markets in Uganda were actually closed, and that's something you have to take note of always as an investor, knowing when the markets are open and when they are closed. But getting to look back at Thursday trading, when, of course, the last day we had the data released, we had at least 4 participants in the trading on the Uganda Securities Exchange, with 3 top gainers and 4 losers on the market. The Jubilee Holdings Limited stock led the gainers at a 9.37% appreciation, up to 4,818.01 Ugandan shillings. Equity Bank Limited also added 0.31% value to the shareholders there, closing at 1,238 Ugandan shillings. Nation Media Group was the last and final gainer with a 0.29% price appreciation, up to 427.19 Ugandan shillings. On the participants list, the companies that participated in trading were 4 in number. However, MTN Uganda recorded the biggest volume for the day. At least over 5.06 million was recorded or traded for the Thursday trading, and this made MTN Uganda the biggest mover for the day. Unfortunately, this ended with a loss of at least 0.02 shillings, accounting for 0.01% loss in share price. As per Thursday trading, the MTN Uganda stock closed at a price of 167.98 Ugandan shillings. Currently, MTN Uganda is one of the stocks that are most valued on the market, in the second position in terms of market capitalization, with a total value of over 3.76 trillion Ugandan shillings on the market, which makes about roughly 19% of the entire equity market in Uganda. At the moment also, when you look at their shares outstanding, currently the stock has over 22.4 billion shares floating on the exchange. On Thursday, the 5.06 million shares accrued a total value of over 851 million Ugandan shillings after trading. The current pricing of 167.98 Ugandan shillings is one of the lowest prices the stock has seen in a year. When you look at the current year-to-date performance, MTN Uganda began this year with at least 180.0 Ugandan shillings. Now with 167.98 Ugandan shillings, they are currently registering a year-to-date loss of at least 6.68%. And putting that in context, that's how much value the shareholder has lost since the year began at MTN Uganda. If you're an investor out there and you began with MTN this year, you've lost at least over about 6% of your value. MTN Uganda, however, is in the 3rd position in terms of the most traded on stocks on the Uganda Securities Exchange over the past 3 months. From the 16th of January to the 10th of April, the 20th of April rather, there was a total volume of at least 10.5 million shares traded, valued at 1.8582 billion Ugandan shillings over the period. Now, on average, they have traded at least 167,000. Of course, this being brought up to 167,000 by yesterday's volume of 5 million, which was one of their biggest one-off trades in the entire quarter. Moving on, besides MTN Uganda, we did have other stocks that did participate in the trading on the exchange. And one of them was Bank of Baroda Uganda. Bank of Baroda saw at least 9,375 shares traded on the exchange. And Bank of Baroda currently has a market capitalization of 213 billion Ugandan shillings, making it the 12th most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Currently, the trading price is maintained at 85 shillings. And when you look at the stock, it has a flat line since last year in October. The price has been quite stable at 85 shillings, and not a single coin has been lost from the shareholders' value or actually added to the value of the stock at Bank of Baroda. Now, last month, Bank of Baroda actually got to have a notice issued there to the shareholders that after their extraordinary annual general meeting, they actually wanted to make get more shares out there that are floated on the exchange. This was as a result of a new requirement by the Bank of Uganda in as far as the threshold amount of value that a bank should hold. And that means in assets and in investments and in so on and so forth. So as far as that is concerned, the stock actually got to get more capital from the public after getting to issue that extra shareholding on the Uganda Securities Exchange. However, currently, Bank of Baroda Uganda is the fourth most traded on stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange over the past 3 months. From the 16th of January to the 20th of April, at least over 9.41 million shares have been traded at Bank of Baroda. And then moving on, the exchange did have other equities participate in trading, and these were Umeme and Cipla Quality Chemical Industries. Umeme traded a total volume of 7,233 shares. And now the stock currently maintains their pricing at 400.0 shillings. This means that currently the stock is valued at 650 billion Ugandan shillings, which makes about a 3.28% of the Uganda Securities Exchange equity market. Now, getting to look at the shares outstanding, we have at least 1.62 billion shares outstanding, and these are the value these bring the value to the 650 billion Ugandan shillings. This year, rather from last year's, from last year's performance of the Umeme company, the company was able to actually recommend a dividend of at least 63.9 Ugandan shillings, which was quite attractive comparing with last year's 54.1 Ugandan shillings. That means that the company will be giving every shareholder, if approved by the shareholders on 18th of May on their annual general meeting, at least 63 shillings for every share that they hold with the Umeme company. This came after, of course, a notice that they issued in December that they will be exiting Uganda in 2025 after the expiration of their concession with government of Uganda to be suppliers and distributors of electricity within the country. That means, of course, there will be delisting as well from the Uganda Stock Exchange very, very soon. Well, consequent of all those preceding events that have, of course, just happened in the recent past, the stock has risen in price and demand, and the company currently trades at least 400 Ugandan shillings per share, which is one of their current highest prices in the last 4 years of trading on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, with Umeme currently trading with the kind of trading it's having, it's in the second position in terms of the most traded on stocks on the exchange in the last 3 months, with a total volume of at least 21.1 million shares. And of course, because of the current pricing, the company's turnover is the biggest in the last quarter as well, with a total amounting to 6.86 billion Ugandan shillings at an average of at least 334,000 shares that are traded currently on average in every trading session. Now, you can be able to access the stock currently, though there is very limited supply. And I have to warn you that the prices could continue going up. So it's not going to stop. It's likely not going to stop. in the near future. Maybe probably after the issuance of the dividend, after the book closure date, maybe things could go down a little bit. But right now, I don't see any more point in time where the Umeme stock is actually going to come down to the former prices. Remember, just last year, they were just trading at 175 shillings and a maximum of 200 shillings. Now they have more than doubled that, and you don't think that that is going to go back or going to be reversed very, very soon. Now, Cipla Quality Chemical Industries also traded 500 shares on the market. This is the only pharmaceutical industry that is listed on Uganda Stock Exchange. The company has been trading on the exchange since 2018 on the 17th of September after a successful initial public offer. Now, Cipla Quality Chemical Industries has a total market capitalization of 252 billion Ugandan shillings, and this represents about 1.27% of the exchange, meaning they are the 10th most valuable on the Ugandan market. The 500 shares accrued a total value of 34,500 Ugandan shillings, and these are after trading with a closing price of 69.0 Ugandan shillings. There was no gain or loss for the pharmaceutical industry on the exchange. Currently, Cipla is also the 6th most traded on stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange over the past 3 months, and a total volume of 250,109 shares has been recorded in that period. Moving on to several other performance indicators here, the all share index inched up 0.21 points, and this was to close at 1,119 points. Now, this is, of course, consequent of the gain on mainly the cross listings like Nation Media Group, Jubilee Holdings Limited, and Equity Bank Limited stock. Currently, the company or the Uganda Securities Exchange is looking at the all share index, which is its benchmark performance indicator, on a weekly loss of 2.14% and a 4-week gain of 2.69%, which is quite good news. At least in the longer run, there's been quite some improvement, and 7.46% is currently the loss on the year-to-date performance, which is still something that is holding back this particular index. The local company index, on the other hand, decreased slightly, at least in terms of percentages, 0.01% down to 269.23 points. Now, this marks, of course, a 1-week loss of 0.52% and a 4-week gain of 0.82%. Over the 1 week, we've had several gains that have accounted for this particular improvement. Those included at least Stanbic Bank and also the Umeme stock that is currently trading at 400 Ugandan shillings. They account for that particular gain in the local company index on the exchange. Allow me to move on to the Nairobi Securities Exchange and have a look at what the trading was like on Monday. The data has been released and is ready for use of the Monday trading. The Nairobi Securities Exchange had at least 48 companies participating in trading, ending the day with 17 gainers and 22 losers on the market. Kakuzi led the gainers at a 9.99% appreciation, closing at a price of 319.25 Kenyan shillings per share, and followed by BK Group at least a 9.03%, whereas Total Kenya had at least a 7.86% added, and TransCentury added 7% on their value. On the losing side, however, Standard Chartered Bank came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 9.41%. Now, Standard Chartered Bank is a Kenyan-based financial institution that provides various banking products and services to individuals, small and medium enterprises, as well as an enormous amount of corporate customers. It offers, of course, several products, including current savings accounts. We also have fixed deposits and as well personal unsecured loans and mortgages, as well as debit cards and foreign currency debit cards, as well as mobile banking services. The company is competing in a very competitive and very heated up financial space in Kenya, where we have quite a number of banks competing for the limited space. Standard Chartered Bank, however, currently holds a stock value of at least 58.2 billion Kenyan shillings, and this is about 3.43% of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. At the moment, they are the 8th most valuable stock on the exchange out of the 65 stocks, meaning they determine a lot what goes on in this company. In the last 1 year, the stock has enjoyed quite an enormous amount of value gain on the market, from averages of 125 shillings to now averages of 154 shillings. And actually, in the last few weeks, they were trading at as high as 165, 168 shillings on the market. Yesterday, the day wasn't so good for them after losing 9.41% of value, and this was shading off 16 Kenyan shillings from their price, closing at a price of 154.0 Kenyan shillings. The market had at least 10,500 shares traded in 20 deals, and a total turnover of at least 1.62 million Kenyan shillings. Standard Chartered Bank currently is the 16th most traded on stock on the Nairobi Securities Exchange in the past 1 quarter. And within the last 1 quarter, they have at least had about 3.64 million shares that are valued at 598 million Kenyan shillings traded. On average, Standard Chartered Bank trades at least 57,318 shares. So it's one of the really attractive stocks on the exchange. However, recent performances have actually undermined the fact that the company is one of the most valuable. Now, Standard Chartered Bank began the year with 142.75 Kenyan shillings and has gained so far 7.88%, which is quite a positive outlook for the exchange and ranking it the 14th in terms of year-to-date performance. However, caution should be taken of the recent bad performance of Standard Chartered Bank in weekly losses of 9.41% and 7.78% in the last 4 weeks. But like I said, always come on the streets when it's bloody. It's usually at around this time that such big stocks really get to give opportunities for the new investors to get into the market. So don't take this as an all bad day for Standard Chartered. Let it be a good day for you. Go out there and buy yourself a huge volume here, because Standard Chartered Bank definitely could be promising to get back to its feet anytime, anywhere. So you can keep that stock and bank on Standard Chartered Bank there in Nairobi. Another company that lost quite an ample amount of value was East African Cables. East African Cables lost at least 8.42% of its stock value after shedding off 0.08 Kenyan shillings down to 0.87 Kenyan shillings per share. Now, East African Cables is engaged in infrastructure and manufacture and sale of electrical cables and conductors. Its products range from copper cables, aluminium cables, fiber optic cables, as well as telecommunication and data cables related accessories. The company's products are manufactured cables for applications in domestic as well as industrial lighting. On the exchange in Nairobi, East African Cables is valued at least 220 million Kenyan shillings, and this represents at least about 0.013%. Now, this makes the company the 56th most valuable on the Nairobi Securities Exchange currently. Now, with yesterday's trading, they had at least 5,100 shares in 16 deals at a 4,442 Kenyan shillings turnover. East African Cables maintains the 31st position in terms of the most traded on stocks on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and this makes it still one of the most attractive investments in Nairobi Securities Exchange small and medium enterprise market segment. Away from East African Cables, Samia Africa lost 8%. I&M Holdings lost about 7.41%, whereas NCBA Group recorded the highest volume for the day. At least over 2.02 million shares were traded, at NCBA Group. Now, the Kenyan Credit Bank facility was currently valued at least over about 65.9 billion, meaning about 3% of the exchange. And when you look at their current pricing, it was at a 40.0 shillings closing price after a gain of 1 shillings, representing at least 2.56%. And in the last couple of weeks, NCBA has done pretty good. And looking at the shorter term, in 1 week, they have gained 8.11%. And in 4 weeks, at least 22%, and over 4.71% in 3 months. NCBA Group is also currently the third most traded on stock in the last quarter, representing at least 6.77 million shares in just between the months of January and April this year. So you can check out some of the value here at NCBA, and that is National Industrial Credit Bank Limited in full there, and be able to buy some of that stock before you run out of time. Safaricom was the second biggest mover this time with a much smaller volume of at least 802,000 shares that have been traded. Safaricom has been struggling in the last few weeks and the price has been dropping. But good news, yesterday they gained at least 0.2 Kenyan shillings and returned with a value of 16.7 Kenyan shillings, marking one of their biggest days, at least in the last very bad days. Now, more about Safaricom. The mobile telephone operator Safaricom has maintained its status as the most valuable brand in Kenya and East African region, valued at least 87 billion Kenyan shillings. That's about 646 million US dollars. Now, that's according to, of course, a new report from Brand Finance. It is also followed by lenders, that is Equity Bank and KCB Bank, in the second and third positions, respectively. According to the report that has just been released, the report is titled Kenya 25 2023, released last week. Safaricom has shown resilience during very difficult operating conditions, including high inflation, a very volatile global geopolitical environment, and disrupted supply chains over the past 1 year. Other brands in the top 10 positions by value are such as M-Pesa, Cooperative Bank of Kenya, Kenya Power, NCBA, I&M, Tusker, and Kenya Airways. Nation Media Group, on the other hand, is the only valuable brand in the media industry to make it to Kenya's top 25 valuable brands. NMG is in position 23 with Centum and the Nairobi Securities Exchange at the 24th and the 25th, respectively. Kenya's top brands have demonstrated very considerable resilience over the past year after very tough times, clearly shown by the brands' value growth achieved by all the top 5 most valuable brands in the ranking, according to Brand Finance East African Regional Director, Mr. Walter Serem. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, to the international stock market. According to the United States Wall Street Journal, the U.S. stocks were mixed on Monday with earnings calendar locked and loaded with heavyweight reports in every sector. Now, the S&P 500, which is the benchmark for the U.S. stocks, at least edged up by 0.13%, whereas the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the top 30 industries in the United States added 0.19%. And then for the technology stocks, the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite actually ticked down 0.16%. Government bonds in the United States fell, and the yield on the 10-year Treasury note slid at least 3.53%, while the rate-sensitive 2-year note also declined 4.16% on Monday morning. This week will be flooded, of course, with earnings reports, including several big techs like Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, as well as Google and Amazon whose shares have pushed the S&P to rally so far this year. And that's it, my friend, from the globe and the region. You can follow for more at Smart24 TV on Twitter, and get to also our website, www.smart24tv.com. My name is Anthony. I'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place.